Hi, my name is Blake. I'm a friend of Luke's, and the way I got my testimony of Joseph Smith, I grew up in the church, so I think I always had some testimony, and I read the Book of Mormon as a child and heard the stories. But once I got a little older into high school and started preparing for my mission, I realized that I really needed to know the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon, and that meant to have a testimony about Joseph Smith and what he did as a prophet in restoring the gospel and what he did with the Book of Mormon. After reading the Book of Mormon again, I prayed very earnestly, more than I ever had before, kind of more desperately, because I did not want to go on a mission if it was not something I didn't know was true. And I just had a very comforting feeling after that, almost a feeling of relief after being in a little uncertainty. And then on my mission, and after that, different times when I was able to bear my testimony about the Book of Mormon or about Joseph Smith, and have those kinds of experiences, it only strengthened my testimony.
I grew up reading the Book of Mormon and I always felt it was true. And when I heard the Joseph Smith story, I had a good feeling about it. But it wasn't until I was in the MTC and I read Moroni's promise, and I decided to get down on my knees before I left for Spain so that I could ask Heavenly Father if Joseph Smith was a prophet of God and if the Book of Mormon was true, and I received that confirmation. And then each time I taught people in Spain the Joseph Smith story and about the Book of Mormon, that testimony was confirmed, and that's how I gained my testimony of the prophet Joseph Smith.
So my whole entire life, growing up in the church, I've always been taught about Joseph Smith, and always just felt like he was a true prophet of God, and I always had that understanding. But I didn't feel like I really had a true gained testimony in my life. So as a church and as a youth group, we went to Nauvoo, and that was really spiritual the whole entire time. But then actually one day we went to Carthage jail, and during that, I definitely had one of the most spiritual experiences I've ever had in my life, and especially I had a prompting and knew that Joseph Smith was a true prophet of God, and that the church was true and that he restored it to the earth. And it was in that moment that I really knew that I had gained a true testimony, and I not just heard of it and thought that it was true, but I really knew in my heart that it was the truth.
Hey, my name's Spencer. I guess I've always believed Joseph Smith was a true prophet, but I guess I didn't really come to have a true testimony until probably this year in college, when I was in my Book of Mormon class. And because I've always read the Book of Mormon, probably starting with First Nephi, but then this time I actually started with the introduction, and I got to read Joseph Smith's testimony, and that was super powerful to me to see his first person perspective of what he went through. And as I read that, I could feel the spirit, and came to know that he was a true prophet. And, yeah.
Hello, my name is Derek. I'm one of Luke's friends. And about Joseph Smith, I always read the Book of Mormon throughout my youth, but ever since I started taking religion classes at BYU, especially the first one with Hank Smith, we read the introduction of the Book of Mormon, and Joseph Smith said that the Book of Mormon is the most correct book, and if you abide by the precepts, it will really, really benefit your life. And that was one of the most profound statements that I've ever read, and I definitely take that to heart. And that is why, one of the main reasons why that I know Joseph Smith is a real prophet, and he was called of God, and that it definitely builds up my testimony of Jesus Christ.
Hi, my name's Lucia. I'm a friend of Luke's. How I gained my testimony of Joseph Smith. I grew up reading Joseph Smith's testimony before sacrament, when I was sitting in the pews just waiting for sacrament to start. And then when I was in Young Women's, they prompted you to, in your prayers, ask to know if Joseph Smith was a true prophet. And I realized that I always knew he was a true prophet. I didn't really need any kind of crazy experience to know. I just always knew. I had been implementing those practices growing up, like reading his testimony and studying the Book of Mormon and studying about Joseph Smith's life. And so I just always knew, just through those feelings that I got as I studied.
I'm not entirely sure when my testimony first came about the prophet Joseph Smith, but in the 70s, the church had a video called The First Vision. I remember watching that and feeling a great spirit. So that was probably my first recollection of the power that the Spirit brought to the story of the first vision and the young prophet Joseph Smith.